The king of boxing is back. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Stay Waiting Podcast. Before we go through anything as well, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody subscribing. We hit the 1K. Let's power on. Let's continue on. And now we got another little celebration beforehand. A little happy belated birthday to Ray. How you doing, man? How's the celebrations?
Thank you. Yeah, it's going all right. You know, gotta give thanks for another year in the words of Habib. You know, alhamdulillah.
I like it.
Gotta give thanks for another year. You see the birthday trim and that looking nice and everything. So it's just throughout the years I'm used to a lot of fights. When my birthday's landed on a Saturday, there's been some big fights during my time. Canelo fight nights, Floyd first, Oscar De La Hoya, and then now yesterday you had Alvarez, Sterling, you had wrestling, you had the NBA, but what we're here for is the boxing and Canelo versus Ryder. So let's go.
First things first, I do want the actual fight itself we'll touch on soon. But it ended with Canelo with a unanimous decision victory, which we kind of all expected. Do want to do the first thing, we talked about this beforehand, is the entrance itself. And when they say an entrance is fit for a king, this is literally what they mean. Canelo coming out to his home crowd, literally showcasing the fact that he is the face of boxing. And I want you to talk to me a little bit more, because you've talked about it, Eddie Hearn and presentation stuff. How he delivered this, was this the perfect way to bring out Canelo in front of his home crowd?
Let me tell you something. You can say what you want about Eddie Hearn, think he's a bit of a wheeler dealer, think he's just a silver spoon kid, whatever. Yeah, that's all nice. The guy knows how to present stars. When we are talking about stars in boxing, this is Starlight-ish. Do you get what I'm saying? This is the big entrances for stars. Especially, it reminds me of like when AJ was versus Klitschko.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you had the AJ on Flames and, you know, the big entries that we came out from the ground. And it's like, this is what stars are meant to be having. So when they're saying face of boxing, don't get me wrong, there are other guys out there, shout out Javante and other guys. But this is the face of boxing type of stuff. These are the entrances you want. The extravagant, over the top, only, you know, once in a while entrances. This is what you get. So we were talking about, you know, back in the day when we had to stay out for like fights, and then sometimes it'll get annoying because, you know, the entrances will take long, but they're not taking long because it's extravagant. They're just taking long to be long, whereas this is like, if you're going to delay my sleeping pattern, I'm here
make
for it.
It worth it. Make it worth it.
This was a worthwhile entrance. This is how you introduce a star. That is how you introduce the face of boxing. And
I was just gonna say, I know we're gonna touch on the fight, but actually, let's go into the fight itself. Canelo, it was basically full domination from the start. There was a period as well in the 5th round where he did knock him down, where he did knock down Ryder. Are you surprised that he didn't get the KO victory in this?
Yes and no. I think Ryder's tough as nails, and I think people also forget this is Canelo at super middleweight, and I feel like some of the power advantage used to have at middle and welterweight and super welterweight, when it was knocking people down excessively, the higher you go up in weight, the harder it becomes to do that. And I feel like it's two things. You mentioned a key quote, and it stayed with me: victim of your own success. This is what this is for Canelo. Nothing's ever good enough now because you've set the bar higher for yourself. The second thing is, we might be in Canelo's twilight. And this is what people are thinking.
Because I was just going to speak on that after.
Yeah, carry on. But yeah, so we'll hold that there. But I think that's what it is. We might be in Canelo's twilight. And I think fans are fickle and bloodthirsty. And, you know, I'm sure near the end of the pod, we'll talk about Buatsi and his, you know, have a short discussion on Buatsi as well. But yeah, fans are fickle, and, you know, when people enter their twilight, it's like they don't want to acknowledge it. And I feel like this is a situation where Canelo's entered his twilight, and, you know, his time might be limited, but we'll speak on that in a bit.
Ryder did I mean, Canelo did allude to the fact that Ryder is a tough opponent, and it was a lot
as
more difficult
nails.
than he expected in terms of being able to knock him down. Coming back from the injury that we talked about before, and how did that left hand look? Were you, if you had to grade Canelo's performance overall, what would you give it as?
By his own standard, a B, but you also got to take into consideration he had surgery on his hand, so it might have just been a case of I'm not going out there to completely whack a guy with this hand I've just got surgically repaired. Like, I think people take for granted you just read it and get desensitized, but when you get surgery to body parts, certain times it will not function the same as it did before, and in comparison to, like, natural healing. So I think this might just be a case of, listen, the wear and tear on the body from boxing alone, let alone the brutality of the sport, can like grate on you. And I honestly feel like, you gotta remember, Canelo started his career at 16. He's 32 now. For most people, 32 is when they're hitting their prime. For him, honestly, his 32 is different to a lot of people's 32. And I am hoping, and not enough people learn from this guy. One of my all-time greats, one of the all-time greats, point blank period, Lennox Lewis. When Lennox realized, he beat everyone in his generation, same way Canelo did, and then he beat Vitali, the same way I feel like Canelo should just go and fight Benavidez, and then if he beats Benavidez, be done with everything.
Don't, yeah.
For me personally, I feel like he needs to get out of this game before the game gets him.
I was just gonna say, because post fight in the interview they kind of alluded to it, and he was kind of forceful to say 175 Bivol, everything to say, I want to do this, I want to do this. If you're Eddie, if you're matchmaking for him now, are we looking at the next two fights potentially just being that Benavidez fight and then Bivol, or what's the road for Canelo?
This is what I'm worried about, because in all honesty, if he faces Benavidez, it's going to be on PBC, because, or it might be cross promotion. You never know, because of what happened with Ryan Garcia and Tank.
And the
Now,
numbers it got,
yeah, so
and
they
we
can't
talked
now.
about. I was
Sorry,
going
go
to
on.
say we talked about having the right dance partner type of thing. I think with how Benavidez has been, with the history, with everything of it, Mexicans, etc.
Yeah,
This is the right dance partner here at this weight class.
absolutely. This is the fight. There is no need to do. The Bivol one for me is more like low risk, high reward. And it's crazy to say that.
Mm,
The only reason I
I'm
say
just
it's low risk,
go.
no, the reason I say it's low risk, yeah, if you lose to Bivol, you're supposed to lose to Bivol. If you lose to Benavidez,
Yeah,
that's where people are looking for Canelo to slip up. And for me, Benavidez is the equivalent to Lennox Lewis Vitali. And that's why I'm saying Canelo needs to fight him now, before, I think, Benavidez' next fight, they said he might fight Dave Morrell next, who's a very great prospect. If Benavidez gets through Morrell, it's almost like, do not let that train gain more steam than it already has. Face Benavidez now, beat Benavidez now, and then for me, what I feel they should do a cross promotion, face Benavidez in September, because we already know that's the date that they want. Face Benavidez, and then face Bivol in your final fight, and then whether you win or lose, retire, because what else is there for Canelo to do? There's nothing else. Leave whilst you're ahead, because this sport is unforgiving and very few people get Lennox Lewis type of exit.
I was gonna say you kind of alluded to it a bit earlier that we're in the twilight of his career, and I think Ryder said something similar. And when you look at Canelo's career, if you said to somebody at the age of 32, you'll have 62 fights, that's regardless of when it started, regardless of how long some of the fights are, regardless of where he was fighting, who was fighting. 62 career fights in general is ridiculous. Following from the fact that he still wants to do more, are we looking, where are we ranking Canelo overall? Like where can we put him in terms of our boxing era then personally, rather than the greats from the past.
If we are talking about, because he came to prominence during the tens, so we'll say that generation, the tens and the early 20s, he's arguably the best. He's arguably, because for me, it's going to be controversial ways. I can't count Floyd in that, only because for me,
I hear it, but carry on.
what Floyd done was amazing. However, I do feel like Floyd was in his twilight fighting other people in their twilight. And here's the thing though, I never fault Floyd for that. The people that always get onto Floyd, oh, you didn't fight so and so when they were doing this and the third. Floyd was in his twilight. Nobody was Floyd in his twilight. Floyd was in his twilight, fighting people at 154, which, in all honesty, his best weight class was either when he was between lightweight and welterweight. When he started going up to 154, that wasn't prime Floyd. He was just that good in his twilight that no one could touch him. His defense was just that good. But him at his best was like Arturo Gatti, first Arturo Gatti. That, I forgot if that was at lightweight, super lightweight, or welter. That's the best Floyd. So when in the tens, when he was facing, like I'm about to say McGregor's not the right fight to go to first, but the Miguel Cottos, who's also one of my favorite ever, and who else? Pacquiao and all those people during the tens. Floyd was in his twilight, fighting other people in their twilight and giving people the biggest payday. Kudos to him. He's one of the best ever. You could never take that away from him, beating so many world champions. However, Canelo, for the fact that he went undisputed, he is the best. He is the best. For me, Floyd dominated. Floyd's best era and generation was in the 2000s. The tens, I can't call it that because he was in his twilight, so was his opponents, and he done the right thing. Get your money out of this sport, because this sport will ruin you, and it's ruined a lot of people, and it's brutal.
It's funny you say this because even in the tens, Floyd fought Canelo. So
Yeah,
it's
he done a smart thing. And he fought
yeah.
early Canelo and put a weight hydration clause on him. I'm not that big fan of like other fighters being able to do that outside of the athletic commission, but he done the right thing. The same thing I'm saying about Canelo to do to Benavidez. Fight him now before he gets the ball rolling, and you're fighting him in your twilight whilst my man's gonna step into his prime. Because when Floyd first Canelo wasn't in his prime, was far from it. But I also can't blame Floyd for that. The heck, why am I going to be dumb enough to fight you in my twilight and you in your prime? No. Let me catch you whilst you're ascending, because you're still good enough. You're just not your best. I'll fight you whilst you're ascending, but then it's almost like that'll look good on my CV in the long term, because it's almost like Floyd knew how great he would be. So it's like, let me face you now. The same way I'm saying Canelo, face Benavidez now. After facing Benavidez, if he beats him, go and dash away all the belts and then go face Bivol and retire.
I just want to touch on one or two more things, and the final bit would be on Ryder, and then we'll look at Buatsi.
Yeah.
But a lot of people talk about ego and stuff, and Canelo's embraced this for a while, which I appreciate. But how do you look at it when Canelo embraces the king persona? Are you happy that this is a guy that knows how great he is, embraces it, and lets people know that I am that guy?
Absolutely. But have you seen where he was 50,000 seat stadium? Man was doing extravagant with a mariachi band. I think they said 150 person mariachi band. He is that guy. That is the face of boxing. Yes, listen, and I've got love for Gervonta Davis, and I hope he's able to do big things like that. Yeah. When people are packing out arenas, that is very good. When you step into the realm of packing out stadiums, that's when you're king. And that is what Canelo's done now. He's got the stadium in his home country. Yes, I'm sure the pay-per-view may not do the greatest because he was facing Ryder. Like you said, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, if I do what my pay-per-view is not all that great, but I fill out a stadium, what are you gonna? You can't shame a man for that, especially that he's already got some pay-per-view records under his belt anyway. I've got pay-per-view records and now I'm doing stadiums. Like, people are gonna always nitpick, and that's what the whole thing about ego comes in as well. It's like you got to have that right balance of ego to get you to where you need to get to, but also don't have enough ego that it ruins you. And I feel like with Canelo, he's at that point where it's hard to tell someone who's at the top to stop. It is.
And just a word on Ryder quickly
Yeah,
itself. Throughout the fight, he broke his nose. You could see it. His face was a bloody mess. I
yeah,
think I want to say Eddie alluded to the fact that he couldn't breathe through the fight
yeah.
itself. Carried on to a point, came stronger
In the later
towards
rounds.
towards the
That's
back end
another
of the
scary thing as well. That's why he needs to face Benavidez now, because he's
yeah.
starting to fade a lot in the latter rounds.
Oh, what going forward down the line, depending on what happens with Canelo and stuff, can we see Ryder in these type of title fights going down in the future, or what can we expect from Ryder now?
I think I would love that for him, but I think with Ryder it's a situation where he also, you could argue, isn't in his prime. So he's at the point where it's kind of like this is that big payday for him. And I'm happy for him. Listen, when people
It's a
get
huge payday. I always say this: if I'm
payday,
starting off
payday,
payday, if someone said to me, "Look, I am starting off at boxing 20, 18, 19, 20, whatever the age is, I
mm,
get to fight the face of boxing in a stadium at his home ground for all the belts," like, I know my career is pretty
50K.
good.
Yeah, listen, and I'm sure that listen, obviously you want to do all the accomplishments, but they're prize fighters as well. And I'm sure that he's probably got a very nice hefty check for that fight. And I hope it is anyway. So listen, shout out Ryder. I don't know if he'll be a title holder at this point, but in a situation where you're here to, like I said, be a prize fighter, hopefully that was a nice prize for him.
And I do want to just shift towards what you said earlier on. From one great dominant fighter to, I'm sorry, it was just a snooze fest.
A prospect who still can't be a prospect in his 30s. And
Yeah,
it hurts to say because this is a GH brethren, and I've been rooting for this guy for so long. But
Joshua Buatsi made his return a year out. I guess there was a lot of talk when he left Matchroom, what he spoke about DAZN, and now the fact that he's always Sky and Boxer. And I hate to be that guy, but he basically turned people off when it came to that fight. You had people leaving in I think it was the fifth or sixth round. Um, have Boxer got a bit of an issue here if Buatsi doesn't step it up? I know obviously there's ring rust, there's one thing, but for me it was just more of a case of that other gear of explosiveness and stuff wasn't there when he was probably in a fight where, yeah, the first half could have gone a certain way, but the second half we expected you to be a bit more aggressive.
here's the thing with Buatsi. This is the point where stop being a prospect. You have to go in there and now up the activity levels and go in there and just boss someone. Obviously, like you said, year rest and training camp's always hard on people, so you never know what injuries are coming in. But he's been given a grace for a long period, but that many fans believe. And so now that's why when they look at him fight, they're like, brother, how long do you want us to give you grace period of like not fighting the top guys? And it hurts because I think he's great, but yeah, the activity needs to go up. And I believe he called Yard out, and I think that's what he needs. He needs a big blockbuster fight because now he's at the point where, like I was saying, boxing fans are fickle, and I don't want them to get to that point where they can either love you or hate you. But the point you don't want to be at is where they don't care because that's when the money's going to go down. And the irony is, he fought, he main evented on a card where another British Olympic prospect in Ben Whitaker just became more polarizing, where there's people that love him, there's people that love to hate him, but they're paying attention
And they're speaking about him. They're not
and they're
leaving.
speaking about him. So Boatsy, I don't know whether it's a case of you need to do a quick turnaround or you need to do a big fight with either Dan Aziz or Anthony Yard, but something. He needs to fight again this year by the third quarter.
Mhm.
No more take a big hiatus. now is the time to capitalize, because like I said, you do not want to go into no man's land of where no one cares.
I was
And
just
I
gonna
honestly
say,
want the best for him. I want him to get a title shot, but you're coming into that ground of no one cares.
I
And
was
that's
just going
scary.
to say that he's not in a position where he's got a title, or he's a mandatory where he can step aside for a potential undisputed unification bout.
Mm.
He's basically, like you said, an old prospect to a point where he has to be relatively active. And you mentioned about Yard. Arguably, you could say the fight that people remember Buatsi for is the Craig Richards fight, a
Yeah,
domestic fight. So
yeah.
it makes perfect sense to try to get one like that. But it is kind of like this boxing deal for me personally is make or break for him. And
Oh,
then
for
after
sure.
that, we don't know where we go. But with that, we are going to wrap up today's episode of the Stay Weighed In podcast. As always, if you enjoy the content, drop a like, share, subscribe. 1K is done. Now the road to 2K comes along. Let us know your opinions about Canelo as well, and his return to action. Are you excited for what lies for the future for him, and also Buatsi's future? But as always, we appreciate you jumping on. And as always, guys, stay waiting.